Hello everyone. Today I wanted to make a video on a recent Kino Lorber release. It's a 1969 movie called The Night of the Following Day. And this only came out a couple months ago, but it is included in the Kino Lorber June Swoon sale that started a couple days ago and goes on for at least a couple more weeks. Night of the Following Day is a kidnap movie. It is starring Marlon Brando, Richard Boone, Pamela Franklin, Rita Moreno, Jess Hahn. And it's a movie that begins very almost documentary-like with very little dialogue. We see the mechanics of how the kidnap plot is set up, how it comes to be. We get little bits and pieces of what's coming, but really not much. We really don't know what the actual plan is. And as is often the case in cop movies, where you have a good cop, bad cop amongst the group, in this movie you have a good kidnapper, Marlon Brando, bad kidnapper, Richard Boone. So the suspense is basically as the plot of the technique of how they're using to make a successful kidnapping and being able to get the ransom without being caught. But there's also the suspense of, well, what are we going to do with the kidnapped person? Are we actually going to let him or her go or not? And then there's the unforeseen circumstances that come up. Nosy cop pries his way into the comings and goings of the kidnappers and the doings of their plot. And then we also have the psychological pressures. The people simply are not up to the pressure of the kidnapping. They're not fit psychologically. They're very imperfect. And as I said, Marlon Brando plays the kidnapper who is concerned with the safety of the kidnapped person, who is played by Pamela Franklin. Richard Boone, however, is the bad kidnapper, and he's indeed very, very bad. And this was a movie taken from a novel by Lionel White, and interesting story in that I think the novel was called The Snatch, and Stanley Kubrick in the early 50s, when he was looking for a property to make his first Hollywood financed movie, got a hold of Lionel White and talked about making the film The Snatch. But there was a taboo against kidnapping movies, and ever since the Lindbergh kidnapping, no studio would touch it. Production code wouldn't approve it. By 1969, the year that The Night of the Living Dead was made, the taboo was gone, but it was still there. The financial people did not want to finance a kidnapping movie. So the writer-director Hubert Cornfield came up with a fairly good, it's not really satisfying way to get around that. He also was able to, he changed the title that everybody loved, The Night of the Following Day. Cornfield, he does one of the commentaries. There's two commentaries on this movie, and he said that he was just looking at his script, and it was a 2-day, all the events take place in 2 days, so he had divided it into the morning, the afternoon, the evening, and then the following day. And when he came to The Night of the Following Day, that might make it a good title, and everybody did, in fact, like it. And this is one of the main interests of this movie is the performance of Marlon Brando. Brando is making quite a few films in the 60s. I think it was his busiest decade of making films. I think he only made 2 films in the 1980s, and even after his great success a few years later in The Godfather and the notoriety of Last Tango in Paris, Brando hardly didn't make very many more movies in the 1970s either. But in the 60s, he was going pretty strong, and you wonder what attracted him to this. Originally, Richard Boone was going to star. Then Brando read the script, and wanted to get on board with it. Boone took the other part. Brando and Boone were good friends from way back in the late 40s. They were struggling Broadway theater actors and had appeared in a half-hour drama in 1948 for television. Rita Moreno was brought on board. She was a Brando girlfriend, had a much publicized affair with her in the 1950s. They had Rita Moreno gotten pregnant, abortion. There's some evidently though they remained friends. But Brando really, he was such an odd actor. He had such great charisma, and but he really wasn't box office in 1969. And his previous films had done very well at the box office, and this film didn't do well either. And he kind of sabotages the movie. Since one of the interesting parts of the movie is, in watching the movie and listening to the commentaries, is how Brando didn't get along with his director, Hubert Cornfield, which was, with half the movies that Brando made, he couldn't stand his director. He doesn't seem to really even want to be an actor. There's times when he seems sort of indifferent to what was going on. And he really does sabotage some of the scenes in this movie, because we get sort of a kind of interesting, almost like a Jean-Pierre Melville kind of crime film, and then we have Brando just out of the blue doing one of his method acting emotional outbursts with actor Jess Hahn, who was really the originator of the idea of the ringleader of the kidnapping, but he's so cowed by Brando's emotional improvisations that he really is diminished as a character. And Brando didn't want to learn lines, so Cornfield just had to let him go with whatever he wanted to do. It sort of, the movie kind of comes to a halt, and then right following that, he has another emotional method acting kind of actor studio scene with Rita Moreno. That one isn't quite so bad, because they seem to be drawing on the baggage from their own personal relationship. And Rita Moreno is, she obviously is attuned to Brando's outbursts, whether they be in acting mode or perhaps even in personal mode. And then there's another scene where Rita Moreno's in a bathtub, and Brando didn't like the camera angle, so he stormed out of the set, and then he comes back about an hour or two later. He's drunk as can be. They were somehow able to salvage the scene, and Cornfield says in his commentaries, I had to cut out all the scenes where, or all the shots where Brando was evidently drunk. And then he refused to do a scene with Pamela Franklin, which is really the scene that Pamela Franklin, ties the whole story together with his affection, being the good kidnapper. He refused to do it at the last minute, and Cornfield said, then Pamela Franklin's role is nothing. And it really is, because why would she even agree to be? And she probably would agree anyways, because she was anxious to meet Marlon and work with Marlon Brando, as so many actors were. But she just sort of walks through the movie, and her scenes, her big scenes, weren't even filmed because Brando just didn't want to do them. There is an atmosphere to this film outside of these Brando, and Brando has such charisma that even when he seems like he is sabotaging the movie, he's still interested. I don't know, he has some relationship with the camera, and he's so fit in this movie. He was 43 at the time, and he was probably as lean and as good looking as he ever was. And he wore a t-shirt for the first time since Streetcar Named Desire. He never wanted to wear another t-shirt in a movie. And he did for this one. When he was asked, he said, well, I got all this great muscular frame, I got to show it off. And so, like I say, there's a good atmosphere to this, and I got to admit that the technical aspects of how they try to pull off the kidnapping is fairly clever. And there's a really good double cross that wasn't in the novel. Hubert Cornfield actually came up with the double cross. And then the ending is really good. I mean, there's there's a couple shootouts, and it has a very eerie atmosphere to it. And like I say, Cornfield did his best. He didn't really, in trying to get around. Brando actually, towards the middle of the shooting, he said, he told the producer, just shoot my scenes so I can get the heck out of here. I can't stand Cornfield. So, which they did, but then by the time they came to the final scene that they needed to film with Brando refused to have Cornfield direct the scene, so he had Richard Boone, who had directed many of his TV episodes of his TV series, direct one of the scenes in the film. There's a really good, Hubert Cornfield had a problem, it's not explained, but obviously had a problem with his throat and needed to use a machine to talk through. But he speaks slowly, and I slowly got used to it, and he's got some great stories. His career was basically over after Night of the Following Day. He had made a few films that weren't any high-profile films. Plunder Road, I think previous to this was Pressure Point with Sidney Poitier, Peter Falk. So he had a great deal of experience in writing and directing. But after this, I don't know whether it just soured him. I think he did a couple of French TV shows, and that was pretty much it for Hubert Cornfield. And the other commentary is by Tim Lucas, and that's really good. He draws a great deal. This is a new commentary. He draws Tim Lucas draws a great deal from Hubert Cornfield's firsthand storytelling about the filming of The Night of the Following Day. I liked this movie a lot, and it's a really interesting film. In many aspects, the backstory and the atmosphere. So overall, I was glad I got this, and like I say, this is part of the King of Lorber sale, even though it was out. It just was released a couple months ago. Okay, that'll about wrap up this video. Thanks again to everybody who stuck with me to the end. You guys take care, and I'll catch you next time.